C10.4, this is our second lecture on this unit. I'm going to conclude Chapter 4 and actually move to Chapter 11. So first, we're talking about evidence, like the video just did. And the first thing is fossils, so please get down the bold. Okay, so a reminder about fossils. Back from when you guys were in elementary school and middle school and even in Discovery Science, there are different types of rocks. What type of rocks are there? There are three types of rocks, you guys. Igneous, what's that mean? Volcanic rock, right? What else? Sedimentary, that's what I want to talk to you about here because fossils are only made in sedimentary rocks. Okay, I'll explain. One more. Metamorphic rocks, which means they were either originally sedimentary or igneous, but then they were so pressurized and heated that they changed. Okay, and they got a little bit different characteristics by all that pressure on them or melting or whatnot. Okay, so sedimentary rocks is where you find fossils. And sedimentary rocks are formed with water. So they're the bottoms of lakes and oceans and rivers, and that's where we get the layering. Now you guys look around, you've seen pictures of the Grand Canyon, or you've visited, you've seen canyons around here, or Slide Mountain even, where earthquakes and other things have revealed the layers, right? And you guys need to make sure you remember that the oldest layers are where? Are they under or are they on top? They're the deepest. They're the under. So this allows for us to make a timeline, and that's where the basis of our geological timeline changes on Earth and the animals, how we have this great timeline. Now we have way more ways of dating Earth now with radioactive dating. We'll talk about that later, like carbon dating, but even using uranium and other radioactive elements to age the Earth. And so anyway, fossils are only formed in sedimentary rock. These fossils here, there's no more tissue there. What happens is when the bones finally break down and deteriorate, they leave a mold there where minerals accumulate from water coming through that soil. And then the bones are replaced with minerals, which are extremely hard. Iron is a mineral. And so that's why they last for so long, these fossils. Okay, moving on. Where are we going next? Overall geography. What's geo mean? Earth. And more specifically, biogeography. Where is what life on Earth? There's patterns. You guys are aware of these patterns. So I copy that down, and I'll remind you. Okay, so you guys know of these patterns. For example, do we find kangaroos around here? No. Where are kangaroos? Australia, New Zealand, that area. They're stuck there, aren't they? They really can't spread beyond that because these, Australia is considered a continent, right? I totally forgot. Is that one of the 7 continents? Yeah. So it's way out there, and they're stuck there, and we don't see, them on any other areas. Now there are those islands, so who knows, maybe in another couple 100,000 years or something, maybe they do get on to like the China area. Then also, just thinking about how things are spread out. Do we have monkeys here? No. Do we have monkeys in the New World? Yeah, down in Mexico, South America, Central America. And we can trace how they've spread. We could go back and look at fossil records, even like with the humans, the out of Africa theory. We can see how humans have slowly spread all over the globe. We can track that movement through old fossil records. And then I talked to you guys about the islands. Islands make great ways of studying, and we're talking about geography here. So island species are closely resembled to the mainland species. And now with DNA evidence, we're seeing that that's where the ancestors came from, the closest mainlands. Populations from one island to another vary depending on their environment. So they've gotten on these islands. Now they're isolated, not permanently, but basically they're isolated, right? It's going to take something drastic for that Galapagos tortoise to get, you know, I don't know what the closest island is. Say it's 10 miles through the sea. That's pretty tough. It's much easier just to stay on the island you're on, right? And then that gene pool, the genes that they have in that population are only being shared within that island. So depending on the environment, they slowly change to get better adapted. Okay, this is one of my favorite ones. So the third type of evidence is called embryology. It's about the study of embryos. So identical larvae with very different, what we think of as the organism itself. We see these things more when they're adults, and they're very different as adults, and they've gone through a metamorphosis, but their larva is exact. We also have lots of examples of similar, not exact, like the larva here, but similar embryos, so they don't go through metamorphosis, but they do develop and change. And we get very diverse animals. So I want to make sure you understand what you're seeing up here. This is the larva stage in the middle to what an adult crab looks like, just like insects going through metamorphosis. Well, guess what? This barnacle, there's barnacles here, they kind of look like rocks or clams or mussels, but they're not clams or mussels. They're related to snails. Actually, this barnacle, the outer parts, are little houses that this organism has made for itself, secreted, like the stuff to make the kind of a shell. And anyway, they come out. This is part of like their little hands, and they sift, and then they pull back in and they eat it. So this is actually an arthropod or a crustacean, like the crab. And we would have thought at first that they weren't closely related. Well, then somebody was studying, hey, when they lay eggs, the eggs develop into the exact same larva. So this is confusing to scientists, and then they figured it out by raising them and studying them. So that's evidence that they have some close ancestry. The same DNA is going to code for it being like that as well. Okay, so check this out. Guess, each of you right now get something in your head. What type of baby do you think? 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess I shouldn't say baby. They're embryos. Okay, so look at it carefully. I'm going to give you some more clues. Now, what I gave you was just, I allowed time to go by. I allowed the embryos to develop further. They're getting more and more traits that you might be able to identify. Okay, let's see. So, this is more embryology evidence. Now, they don't go through metamorphosis. We're in this group. But the early stage of life, the early embryo, are they not very close like each other? They all have tails, for example. Now, what do all these things have in common? What's growing back here? The backbone, the spine, they're all vertebrates. Now, 2 of the vertebrates are pretty closely related. Which ones? The pig and the human and the pig are both what? Mammals. Okay? And do their embryos look, I don't know, that one still looks different. But anyway, okay. Now, the chickens in what class of vertebrates? The mammals is one class. What's a chicken? A bird. What's a fish? A fish, that one's easy. We're missing reptiles and amphibians. There's 5 classes of vertebrates. And you can get the pictures of the reptiles, and the amphibians also in their embryos still look very similar. The most distant related vertebrate from us actually is a fish, but still we have lots of similarities. Okay, on to anatomy there. So we have, and you could say the embryology is also a study of anatomy, but on adults now. So you have a box for anatomy, which is just fine with writing comparing body parts, and then you have a box for homologous structures. Okay, so homologous structures, we see a lot of these. Now these are all vertebrates again, and when we look inside at the anatomy for the bones, we see lots of similarities between all the vertebrates, okay? With not fish with the hands, because fish don't have hands, but with let's see, the rest of them, birds, amphibians, reptiles, yep, the other 4 classes all show homologies in their skeleton. So count with me, you guys. First, with these 4 fingers right here, how many bones are in each finger? 3. And then we even have wrist bones. They're broken down, and we also have 2 arms in our forearm, or 2 bones in our forearm right here. And I know it's harder to see in the mole, but once again, he has 3 finger bones, wrist bones, and then these 2 bones. Even in the bat, and the bat is not, it's actually, these are fingers that go down through the skin of his wings, different than birds. However, birds still have the 3 finger bones. They still have the 2 bones here also. And they're just kind of scrunched up in the top of the wing, and the feathers come down to give it the wing its body shape. But the bats, those are actually finger bones. There's one here, one there, I think one here. And then, yes, these are part of the arm bones. Okay, and then also another bone up here for the upper one. So these are called homologies, or homologs. Why? What does homo mean? Same. So this is evidence they came from a common ancestor. Now, another interesting thing that is evidence of evolution, but not of a recent ancestor, is that these similar types of adaptations rise up, like wings in this case. Now, these are not homologous. These are analogous, like an analogy. So quickly get the bowl down. Analogous structures have similar function, and they're not evidence for a common ancestor. I think most of us can agree that a fly and a bat are not closely related. Right, you guys? Even though they have wings. Kind of reminds me when you guys were doing Evo animals. Some of you guys wanted to put all the sea creatures together, right? Which was fine. You can group that way. But I'd rather us look at these groups as showing evolutionary backgrounds, family histories, who's more closely related to who. Now, to memorize this, you guys remember Osmosis Jones? So that story was an analogy story. The human body to a city. You guys remember this? So he had the electrical wires were analogous to the nerves in your body. So these are analogies. Here's the word analogy, right? A-N-A-L-O-G. You hear it, you guys? So they have similar function, but they're not homologous. They're not the same inside. Okay, back to over there to anatomy. You have vestigial structures. And these things used to have a purpose, but since the environment has changed, those structures have gotten small. They don't do what they normally did. Our appendix is an example of a vestigial organ. We do know it does do something for us, but not what it originally was designed for. It actually is like a little bacteria sink. We let bacteria grow in there, and the bacteria help us digest our food. But it used to be really important when we were eating much differently than we are today. We didn't cook in the past, for example. So what's the vestigial structure on the ostrich? Anybody out there? Yes, the wings. So write that down. Abbreviate example with I period E period. I don't know what it means. Is it something in Latin or Greek? I can't remember. So vestigial organs are also evidence for evolution. They show that the organism has changed. It's evolved. Okay, almost done. I want to show you a couple things. You only need to write down this next word if you won't remember it or can't remember it or if it's brand new. So, do we know what paleontology means? Hello, do you? Well, paleo means old. Okay, a paleontologist studies fossils or extinct organisms. So just add this on to the bottom. There's no place to put it if you can't remember this. So a paleontologist is the person who does it. The ology, there's the study of. So paleontology is the study of fossils or extinct organisms. And the video talked to you about this exact example. I think it was it? You guys were probably paying attention. I was trying to make cards real quick. I'll pay attention a little bit better next time. But I think this is a well-like organism. It's still 50 million years ago, though. And we see vestigial organs, those back legs, hip bones, are not even connected to the spine. I want to put this one up here. You don't need to write it down, but we're also getting more and more molecular evidence. And I have a good feeling, correct me if I'm wrong, but on the proficiency test, they will probably be asking you to compare DNA strands or amino acid strands, because you could do translation, right? Transcription translation, they could have you compare amino acid strands. Anyway, if there are many differences between the strands, then they're more distantly related. If there's more similarities, they're more closely related. Is the hippopotamus and the humpback whale pretty closely related according to this little teeny strand of DNA? Exact. One difference here. Exact. And one difference here. That's molecular evidence. Okay, one more. It'll go much quicker. 11.1. So we've been talking about big changes. This chapter is going to talk more about little changes within populations. So genetic variation is beneficial because you have a box right there. Okay, again, I've been talking about variation all year long. So we need variation for evolution to even occur. If all the organisms are exactly the same, if the environment changes and they can't survive, they all die. If there's variation, though, maybe some can make it. The second box, what does it say? Is it where it's stored? So where is variation stored? Well, back at the gene level. So in a population's gene pool, just like a swimming pool. This is all the possibilities, all the possible genes that a population can have. So when we look at those frogs, we see variation, the phenotype, but which is actually caused by the genes. Okay, so now let's look at the alleles in this population. So allele frequency is how we measure it. Frequency, how frequent something happens. It shows how common an allele is, and in this case you're talking about the big G that codes for green skin versus the little g that codes for that brownish skin. Okay, so mutation, again, we've talked about it over and over. Recombination through crossing over. Abbreviate, you guys. Get this down quickly. You don't need it all. Abbreviate.